Okay, so hello and welcome to this live session on plastic waste management. So this is the second and the last live session actually for this course, which is we are going to have it for next hour or so. So as you know, in the live session, the standard procedure that we follow is we start with the questions that has been submitted to us through the Google form. So we'll get those questions. I have already gone through those questions. So I will kind of go through those questions, and then we will start taking the questions that you start putting on the chat box. And in between, I'll also take up some questions that we have selected from the discussion forum, which has come in recent past weeks. So let's get started. I hope that you all are keeping safe with this current environment that is happening in the country, and it probably like happening in the world. So first question is from Sivam Rastogi. The question is it's more on he's asking kind of a personal kind of question. That he's a BSc physics student. After getting through your course, it created an interest, and I want to pursue higher studies in the plastic waste management field. How I can do so? So you can, since you are doing BSc in physics, you can go for masters and then you can go for PhD. That's what if the higher studies, if you're asking about higher studies in that. See, any student these days, these are highly multidisciplinary subjects. So you can, even as a physics student, you can get in there. Physics student do work on the material. So material properties and all that. So you can start looking into plastic as a material scientist. So you can get involved in the school of say material science, and there are a lot of different ways you can get into those higher studies. So I would encourage you to go there and do some higher studies in this area. So again, you should look at the options at different IITs, IASCs, and other places where you can go for these kind of study. So if you do Google, you'll find it. So that's it's essentially you can work on the material side, you can work even on the management side. So its choice is yours. So the next question, I'll take it up is from Afzal. The question is it's on exam. Is MCQ are going to come through your lecture PDFs, or it's going to be outside the reference books? Please send reference books list or research paper for your NPTEL exam to help me to prepare well. So if every week we have been posting, other than the lecture material, those PDFs that you are getting, you have the lecture videos, you have the slides PDF, and then on top of that we have also given you reading material for every week. So you should look at those reading material as well, which is attached at the end of each week. As you scroll it down, you will be able to see that. Please do refer to them, and it will help you prepare for the exam. So these three, like listening to the videos carefully, maybe again and again, going through the lecture slides and going through those handouts or the reading material provided for every week is good enough. I think that is good enough for the exam questions that you will have. So that should not worry you. Like you don't have to look at material beyond that for exam. Of course, if you want to learn something new, there is always, this is a very dynamic field. Things keeps on changing every week. New things keeps on coming in plastic waste related spheres because a lot of things are happening globally on this. It's a very hot area right now. Third, Roshan Saxena in week 4 assignment question number. So this kind of relates to a question related to an assignment which is 15. The meaning of word affected was misinterpreted and is told to be positive as answered in the forum, as the word affects being something in negative sense, while in the weak material it clearly mentions that in spite of China's waste ban, these countries will be benefited. Then how the option is true when a statement is saying these countries will get affected? So actually the question we did after looking at your question, we went back and look at the quiz question where it says the question was countries like Malaysia, Indonesia and Vietnam are highly likely to get affected by Chinese sword policy. True or false? The correct answer was given as true. So they will be affected by Chinese sword policy. And effect in general, when we talk about the technical part, effect means actually impact. It could be positive, it could be negative, it can be either way. So the statement is true because the countries are affected because they are because of the China sword policy. These countries are going to start getting those plastic waste coming from Western world. So that's So that's what that's why it is positive. Also the waste wise the countries are, so if you look at that way, in terms of getting money coming into the country because of those plastic waste, you can say that it is in a positive way, but the waste coming into those countries is also kind of negative. So huge amount of waste coming into the country would increase the waste problem. So when we are talking about affected here, it's actually in general means impact. So that's what we were looking at. So we are not so they will get impacted by this Chinese sort policy. They did get impact by this Chinese sort policy. So the next is Shreya Vaidyan. Question is, hello sir, what is your opinion on current EPR practice, extended producer responsibility practice in India, and if you had to opportunity to make some policy recommendation for EPR implementation, what would be your suggestions? So in terms of say if you look at the effective policy design on EPR, that of course depends on country to country, the national circumstances, what are the conditions there, what are the priorities there. So some policy recommendation of course to get the stakeholders involvement in development of EPR. Many times all these rules and regulations gets made without taking into account the basically the different stakeholders are not on that table when the decisions when these things are framed. Since the rule has to be implemented by those different stakeholders, so they should be brought together and they should be on a table in terms of development of the rule itself. There should be clear allocation of responsibility among all stakeholders. So involved, while producers have the primary responsibility, all actions all actors must bear responsibilities as well. There should be transparency of EPR in terms of how it will work and all that. Government support, monitoring, evaluation and control. I think in the video I also mentioned that government support is very essential. We cannot just leave it for the private parties to fend for themselves, because see they are not expert in waste management, or say Lay's, if you look at those Pepsi and other companies which are making all those products, they are not expert in waste management. So I think if you remember from the video, I give the example of that Ontario stewardship program, Ontario in Canada, where they are essentially taking money from these waste producers, but they have set up a quasi government body. It's like a public sector undertaking which is known as Ontario stewardship program, and they help in bringing all the stakeholders on one table and try to bring transparency in the system and try to have it run. So that's what it's needed. Government support is ambitious and clever policy targets are a necessity, like what really you want, that clarity, as transparency or clarity is very important. Then you need to look at for example EPR, and we talk about collection services, those recycling centers. So the accessibility of those collection services nationwide for different waste streams. And then the compensation of cost for use of municipal infrastructure. So if you are using municipal infrastructure, there should be they need to be compensated. So overall, if you look at, there is no one size fit all for EPR. It's an implementation is a complex, bringing many potential challenge. But there are additional and more practical and operational aspect if you look at the successful EPR implementation, including the existence or lack of waste management infrastructure, existence or lack of other waste policy measures such as landfill ban, pay as you throw systems and all that. So overall it requires a holistic approach. So as I hope it kind of answers your question, that in terms of policy recommendation, number one is getting all the stakeholders, some hand holding, government has to keep a close eye on it, and government has to act as a facilitator. So those kind of policy recommendations I would like to make on that. Now we have a question from which is coming now from Sunil Kumar. How plastic waste shredding for road construction, and what is the price of the shredding machine? I have no idea about what is the price of the shredding machine because I have not purchased one. I have never looked into the price for one. You should be able to find it through IndiaMart and other websites, similar website, or you can talk to some places like Justco. If you are, I don't know you are in which city right now, but Justco is the Jamshedpur Urban Services Utility Company, which they have used plastic waste for road construction, or you can approach any cities who are using these plastic waste for road construction, they may be able to tell you what is the price of the shredders. If you cannot find it online, you should be able to find it on India Mart and other website. I don't have a number for that. If you are still not able to find it, if you put it on a discussion forum, we will try to find that for you. Now, how plastic waste is shredded for road construction? Of course, it has to be brought down to smaller pieces, because see, it has to, why smaller pieces? Because it has to be melted. It has to melt with the bitumen while the road is being laid. So, bitumen, it acts as a binder. So, in the temperature where it is heated up with other raw material which goes into laying of the road, it needs to melt. To make it to have it melt properly, you need to put through a shredding machine and get into smaller pieces. Usually we will try to get something like less than a centimeter size, so that it becomes easier in terms of the melting process. So, Vishwesh Patel, his question is tutorial sheets, practice questions for exam. Since this course is entirely theoretical, there is no math questions are there, as you may have seen in those slides as well on those videos. Since it's a plastic waste management course, it is more of like a management course where we talk about rules, regulations, different ways of managing the waste. We have not included any math component here, because we wanted to attract a wider audience to this course. So, we have kept it simple, so that people from, say, non-engineering, non-science background can also take it and be able to take this course. So, there is no math there. So, that is why I do not know what you will like to have in tutorials, because usually when we do tutorial, we do the math problem. In terms of practice questions for the exam, I would say you should look at all the quizzes that you have done. You should look at all those quiz questions. That is good enough for your kind of to find out what kind of questions you expect in the exam. So, similar questions will be there in the exam, of course not the same questions, but similar questions, similar level of difficulty you can expect in the exam as well. So, that is what I would say for Mr. Vishwesh Patel's question on tutorials and practice question. But still, again, if you have any, we will be keeping an eye on the like we are keeping an eye on the discussion forum. If I remember correctly, I think this is the last week, but if, as you probably know, that exam is postponed because of this COVID-19 issue, like global issue. So, I think the exams are now being planned towards the end of April, but IIT Madras NPTEL office will be in touch with you and giving you all those information regarding exams and other stuff. It depends on how the things evolve in coming weeks in the country. So, while we are waiting for your questions on the chat box, we will take some questions from the discussion forum as you put in your questions in the chat box. So, there is a question from Pia. The question is, sir, what is China doing with all those imported plastics? If it was profitable to them to recycle plastic, why did they stop taking it? So, China was, as you know, if you go to any mall, even in India, many products you see is made in China. And throughout the world, if you go to any big shopping area, you find many products are made in China. So, China required, over the last 2 decades, China has really become a big, even I would say 3 decades now, China has become a big manufacturing hub for entire globe. So, China required a lot of raw material, and the raw material, they were, since their own recycling system was not in place, the way it kind of started is they wanted this raw material to feed into those manufacturing plants, because these raw materials are needed, and the raw materials were not available in China. Their recycling system has not improved. So, what happened was, since the recycling system was not in place in different cities and towns in China, the easier way for getting them these raw material, the secondary material, was importing these recycled waste material, recyclable material from different countries in US, UK, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and all those developed countries where the recycling system was in place. So that's how they started this getting, and then they set up their own, gradually they started setting up their own recycling facility, and Chinese economy has grown, and they have a they almost slightly higher population than India right now. So since they have so much of people already in the country producing a lot of waste, they have, so now, and their recycling system is in place, so they do not need to get waste from abroad. So right now they can feed all those manufacturing facility from their own recyclables rather than getting the waste from abroad. So since it is a free trade and all those global trade policy and all that, so they cannot really ban. So what they did is they started putting some restriction, and the restriction, as I mentioned in that Chinese SWOT policy, that there was a restriction that you cannot send contaminated plastic waste or contaminated recyclables, not only plastic but other recyclables as well, to China. So it has to be really clean material. Now that clean material, to achieve that amount of clean material that China wanted, is actually kind of very difficult for these Western countries. So automatically there was a ban. So China just stopped taking those garbage, like recyclables I will call, I will not call them garbage, recyclable which had certain amount of contamination. So that's how they stopped taking it. So if it was, as your question is, it was profitable to them to recycle plastic, now they have their own recyclable plastic available, so they do not need from abroad. So they put this restriction that you cannot send this dirty plastic to us, you have to send it clean plastic. Now this Western world it's difficult to get those clean plastic, because if they are doing those cleaning of the plastic, that requires a lot of infrastructure, and at the same time they have started thinking that if we are going to clean this plastic to that extent, why not we use it within our own country, why should we send it to China? So the all markets started developing back in those Western world. In late 70s, early 80s, actually these Western countries were doing pretty good in terms of recycling those waste material within their own country. Now China making it cheaper to send it to China rather than doing this process in their own country, actually killed those recycling industry in those in Western world. Now they are trying to revive those industry back into the Western world. So that's I think that answers why did they stop, because they do not need them anymore. They can feed their own, they have enough recyclables within the country itself, and it was profitable to them earlier, so they did it, and then now it's they don't it's the dirtier material that they are getting from Western world is not good for them. So they have and in the environmental regulations are also getting stricter in China. Earlier they have polluted a lot. That what happened, any industrialization what happens, initially you start polluting a lot, but as your GDP grows, as you get into a after you have food on the table, you start worrying about the air quality, water quality, and all those stuff. So China is in the stage now where it's much ahead than, if you compare China and India, actually China is much ahead than India in many aspects. So that's the reason they can afford right now to not to take this dirty stuff, and then they can have their own waste which they can recycle in those plants. So I hope that answers your question. And then there is a question from Shreya Vaidyan. Sir, once this pandemic corona subside, don't you think our next immediate concern would be to mass disposed? High time for some enforcement on plastic waste management, right? Yes, those masks, that's what in fact I was talking with one of my PhD student today, that this mask waste, after this people, you see mask everywhere now, and but if you follow the doctor's advice, in fact people like you and me doesn't need to wear mask all the time. It's only the people who are in direct contact with many people, like security staff or the reception people, they need to wear mask. But since whenever this happens, first thing you see people start putting mask on it. But yes, we are getting, I'm seeing even wherever I go, people are using lots of mask, and wherever the mask is not available, they are using handkerchiefs and other stuff. So once this will go, yes, once this tragic, like the situation, that pandemic situation is over, we will get lots and lots of mask waste coming into the stream. But many of these masks, if you look at, they are some of them are mixed material, but many of them are like some sort of cloth material which may have some recycled plastic there. So but I am more worried about say when all these mask waste comes in, to handle it. If you have that virus is still there, so it will be really, you have to really careful when you start looking at that mask. Hopefully it will be a concern. You are correct, it will be a concern. So high time for some enforcement on plastic waste management. High time is already there. This mask will add little bit to it, because mask will be actually mixed. So it will be plastic and textiles and other stuff mixed there. So yes, I agree with you that yes, plastic waste management. So enforcement, again, rules are there. Enforcement is trying to, and its enforcement is always slow in country like us, but yes, I totally agree that we have to look at the enforcement there as well. So now I'll go to some another question coming from the discussion forum from Gulsan. Question is, sir, you said that earlier in 12th lecture that we can't create lots of wealth from plastic recycling due to combined mixed plastic. I want to start my own plastic recycling plant, so it will be helpful to me or not? See, again, it depends on how you are able to collect that plastic waste. So if you can get it source segregated, if you can get this plastic source segregated, not mixed with others, it's relatively cleaner material. So it's then you will be able to make money out of that. But if it's a combined waste, mixed waste, where things are all mixed together, then it is difficult. So depending on the quality of the plastic involved, collected, your profit you make out of plastic recycling will depend on that. As a lot of plastic industry is depending on recycled plastic pellets. Recycled plastic pellets do sell. So I would say, if you have money, you want to set up a plant, I would say you should probably go ahead and do it, and it will make you viable income. But of course, you have to do a lot of in terms of collection. If the collection system improves from the municipal area from where you will get that plastic waste as a source, that will really help you. And if not, then you have to set up a plastic kind of collection, plastic segregation in your plant itself. Ashish has a question that, sir, I want to study on Indian human behavior about solid waste management. What do you think about this topic? If any chance that it is useful for us, please tell me what can I do for further details. So Ashish, I don't know your background, I assume that you are a from a humanities background. Either you have that background or you have an interest in that area where the behavior science and all that. So yes, that's a very good topic and requires a lot of actually effort right now to understand that, because as you have mentioned, so you understand that when we talk about waste management, plastic waste or solid waste management, it's that human behavior aspect is very important, and technical people like us, we are not expert in that human behavior aspect. So many times we do miss them. You can set up a very nice facility, but if you are not getting good source segregated garbage, if you are not able to convince the people why the source segregation is important, then it becomes difficult to sustain those plants. So yes, I would encourage you to kind of study in that area. Again, you can approach people working in this area. There are people working in this area, some in India, many in abroad, on kind of behavior aspect related to waste management. So next question has come from the chat, live chat right now. Can we assume that because of this deadly virus corona, some part of pollution may decrease, whether it may be plastic waste or municipal waste? That's from Akhil Nayak. Yes, you can say that, because if the economic activities go down, which it is suggesting that it is going down globally. You may have heard about some news. I don't know how much authentic are those news and those WhatsApp messages which talks about that in China now the birds are singing in that Wuhan area city and all that. So because there is no air pollution and the climate, you can see clear sky. It is possible, unless but at the same time it came at a very heavy cost. So some part of pollution may decrease, yes, if people are at home, people are not traveling, of course your vehicular emissions will go down. And in terms of plastic waste or municipal waste, as long as we are consuming there will be some impact, because if people are not going to the airport, people are not going to buses and other trains. So those waste that is produced, sometimes all those packaging material, packaging food that we eat, probably that will go down. If people are staying home, you will have less waste produced, because in home you don't you use either big packaged boxes, or you don't have much packaging when we use things at home level. So yes, it is going to help. It will reduce to some extent, but I would rather not have this COVID-19 problem than worrying yet. I would try to look at other avenues of reducing waste rather than having this COVID-19 issue, which is kind of unfortunate situation right now. So next question from Shreya again, Shreya Vaidyan. Sir, for Indian states, is centralized or decentralized plastic waste is recommended? So depends on the population. Say for decentralized system, for any waste management system to work, there is a concept called economy of scale. Economy of scale means that you need to have certain amount of waste coming into that plant to be economically viable. In the integrated waste management for the smart city codes, we kind of discussed that in a little bit detail, not in this course. So that video you can find on YouTube as well. It's under that waste to energy section. So what we are it's a economy of a scale. So you need a certain amount of mass coming into that plant. If it's a very small of a plant, it's usually like it will not be economically viable. So if you are talking about big cities like Delhi, Bombay, and these big cities, decentralization kind of makes sense, because you have enough volume coming in. If you are looking at very small cities or towns and other places like population less than say few lakhs and other stuff, decentralization may not work, because you will not have enough volume for that plant to be economically viable. Decentralization do help in transportation cost. It reduces the transportation cost. Again, in big cities it helps, because that it gets things needs to be transported on a longer distance. In smaller cities or towns, transportation cost reduction in transportation cost will not be high enough to have that economical viability of having a decentralized plant. So for big cities, I will say yes, decentralized plant. For small towns and low population cities, those are essentially towns, I would say going for centralized waste management system. So again, it's not one size fit all. It depends on where you are. So next I would go to the question from the discussion forum from Rohit. The question is, the plasticizers impart plasticity to plastics, which is a good property. If we consider plastic for making different products, then why do we need to use solvents which will dissolve plasticizers, ultimately reducing plasticity? So plasticizers, as you said, it does increase the flow and thermoplasticity of a polymer. How it does that? It decreases the viscosity of the polymer melt, and the glass transition temperature, which is typically referred as TG, the melting temperature, and the elastic modulus of the finished product, without altering the fundamental chemical characteristics of the plasticized material. So it does decreases all these properties of that. So it helps in making it like imparts the plasticity. Solvents, on the other hand, are used either as a diluents or to enable the application of the polymer, like as a paint or adhesive. So those are used. So if additives are used, so if you are using the additives for different purposes based on the application required for the plastic, so we may have to use these plasticizers, but these solvents. But otherwise, as you said, yes, unless you have to use it, say if you are using solvents for diluents or enable the application of the polymers such as paints or adhesives, there where you have to use solvents. So it depends, depending on the purpose, on the application required for the plastic, you may sometimes have to use for solvents, and otherwise you don't have to. So that's basically why sometimes we have to use solvents for essentially for its application as a paint or adhesives or similar application. So next question Sir, what is the test process to find the percentage of plastic in dense bituminous macadam like plastic road? So, it is like when you design that plastic, as far as I understand, you can ask this to a transportation engineering expert as well, those who have done that. But as far as I understand, what happens when you design your plastic road, when you come up with that mixed design, there you replace plastic, but you replace certain part of bitumen by this plastic. So, that is how it is designed. So, basically you know how much plastic is there. Once it is all melted, it is kind of you have a plastic road which is all melted. Then after the melting process, as far as I understand, it will not be easy to distinguish to find out the plastic constituents in there, because it will be kind of bounded with the bituminous material. But over the wear and tear, so if you do a wear and tear test on it, so as you do wear and tear test on these bituminous macadam, you will see some of these plastic getting out as a what is known as the micro plastics. So, if you can identify those microplastics using, there are different ways people are doing the microplastic these days using FTIR and other analysis. So, you have to take those samples and do those FTIR and other analysis there, and then you come up with how much is getting released from there. In terms of how much percentage is in there, that is typically there in the mixed design. And so, there is a professor from Southern University, and I think we have referenced his work on in our different case studies, different usage of plastic. It is there in your reading material. There he talks about detail about that bituminous plastic road mixed design details. So, it should be there. If you cannot find it, we can provide you that information through discussion forum. Right now, I do not remember that mix and all that on particular, like what is the mixed design percentages for different constituents when they do the plastic road. So, I hope that answers your question. So, we are live, we are looking at your questions right now. So, I did go over whatever the questions I brought, the common questions I brought from the discussion forum. We also have gone over the questions which was submitted to us through through that Google form earlier, and we are looking at the questions that are coming through the chat box. So, if you have any questions, please go ahead and post it. Again, this is the last live session. We will have we do not have any further live session. Your exams unfortunately has to be postponed because of that COVID-19 situation. So, you will get information on when the exams will be conducted, especially for those who have registered for it. And again, I hope that you have enjoyed the course so far. You have discussion forum has been active quite a bit. So, we have been able to respond to your queries on a day-to-day basis. If you have any issue, if you have any question, like issues or questions, concerns, again you ask now, or you can ask on the discussion forum as well. We will keep an eye on the discussion forum until your exams are done. So, so there is another question just came in from Akhil Nayak. So, it says, can we tell that Indian waste management is very good? Unfortunately, I will not say that. So, it's very good is a very subjective term. What do you mean by very good? Right now, the waste management system in the country is requires, of course, lot of investment, lots of improvement. There are some good spots. There are some you hear about Indore, you hear about some other cities that they are doing some that they have taken some initiative and they are doing work on those area. But presently, I would not consider it very good. If you I don't know whether you have had a chance to look at my integrated waste management for smart cities course, where we talk about in great detail about the global scenarios of municipal solid waste management in general, and then we talk about Indian scenarios as well. So, there presently the best example comes from Western European countries, and North America and Australia and New Zealand, they are doing some part, they are doing good, some part not that good, but in Indian scenario still we have a long way to go. We have right now, if you just look at the data, as far as I remember, it's around 70 to 80% of the waste is just collected. So, nearly 30% of the waste is not collected. You just travel on train, along the train track on the both sides you will see the garbage. You go to just outskirts of the city, you will see the garbage. Other than the main streets of any city, you see garbage just there. So, a lot of littering, waste not being collected. Hardly 70 to 75%. That's the official data. Actual, sometimes I feel like even less than that. And then you have like even those which is collected, hardly around 25% of that gets treated in a treatment system. Rest is just going into a dump site, which is an unlined landfill. So, which creates a lot of air issues, the fire issues. Just if you are in Kolkata area or any area, Devanar landfill in Mumbai was on fire, Dhapa gets on fire every off and on. So, you have these fire issues, you have things getting into the water, things get into the airborne. So, a lot of issues are there. So, I would not call it a very good waste management system, not at all. So, next question is from Mohit. How can we generate energy from rank 5, 6 and 7 type plastic? So, again rank 5, 6 and 7 type plastic, they can be sent to waste to energy plant. See, all these plastics they are coming from essentially petrol, essentially gasoline. So, they do have good calorific value. 5, 6 and 7 plastic is not that easy to recycle. So, what happens is it's better you put it in a waste to energy plant. So, if you burn that, you do the incineration, I will not use the term burn, I will use the term incineration at a temperature of around 1000 degrees and above. So, you can generate energy out of that because of the calorific value it has. You will get heat, and that heat can be used as a to make the steam and for energy, like for your energy generation. So, that is how it can be done, and that is how it is being done in waste to energy plants. The catch here is you should keep the temperature pretty high, otherwise you have issues of dioxins, furans and other air pollutants coming out. There should be complete combustion, as if you look at the incineration plant, waste incineration plant, if you read about that, if you are not aware of it, I would encourage you to read about that. That integrated waste management course may be helpful, and that course will rerun in this coming semester. The next semester there will be this course will be rerunning again. So, those of you who have not taken it can take that course if you have time, if you are able to, and there we again we talk about that waste to energy. So, it's a that's how it can be used. Good calorific value, it can be used there for energy generation. Shreya has a question, sir, are you familiar with any research going on in India on plastic waste management? If we are interested in doing a research and PhD, there are research going on in plastic waste management. In fact, in my research lab itself, we have 3 students right now working on plastic waste management, 2 on working on using plastic as a fuel, or using plastic trying to do pyrolysis of the plastic using as plastochar for mining sites like a rehabilitation and all that. So, or using plastic as a fuel, and then a new PhD student recently started, he is going to work on looking at microplastics fate and transport in the environment. We have a colleague in the department, his student is also working on plastic. So, these 4 students, it's only that I know of in IIT Kharagpur itself. So, there are, of course, there are even IIT Bombay, there are a couple of students working on plastic waste, and since the papers are still coming out from these labs, these are all students who have just kind of started working on it this last 2 years or 2.5 years. So, there are if you will start seeing papers coming out from these hardworking PhD students soon. So, that then you will get more idea, but of course, yeah, there are people working on plastic waste management in research in India, and of course, also in abroad. abroad. I know a collaborator for one of the project. We are actually collaborating with the University of Auckland. So, there are people working in abroad as well on plastic waste. So yes, if there's somebody interested in doing research or PhD on that, there are research labs in India which are working on that, and also in abroad. So you should explore that option. We need to do lots and lots of research on this plastic waste, including all the different aspects. We are also working on a project right now with National Geographic Society, where we are looking at the role of IIT Kharagpur is on which is like I'm leading that effort from the IIT Kharagpur side, is to looking at how much plastic is getting mismanaged as part of municipal solid waste stream and getting into the river Ganga. So river Ganges. So that's a part of the National Geographic, the TV channel that you see. The same organization has supported that research, and there are people from US there are people from UK, there are people from Bangladesh, because part of Ganges does go to Bangladesh, and there are all the different aspects people are looking at in terms of how much microplastic in the river Ganga, what is the social behavior, all those angles are. It's a kind of a holistic project. Being a waste management research lab in our from IIT Kharagpur, we are focused on looking at from a municipal solid waste angle, how much plastic is being mismanaged, what are the different types of plastic, how to improve the plastic waste management along the river Ganges, and how to estimate how much plastic is really going into river Ganges. So those are the things we are looking at, and we have two another so other than these PhD students that I mentioned, we have two master students working on that as well. So Motilal sir, tell me electronic waste just like a promo. I think we can't reuse. Can we recycle? And basically motherboard is mostly plastic merged with aluminum or copper like that. We collect that. I think it's your got cut there, but anyway, I think I got the. So about electronic waste management, there is a parallel course which was running this semester where we talk about that. We can't reuse or recycle. You can, in fact, if you what happens is the electronic waste, if you dismantle, there will be some plastic, there will be some mixed plastic which you cannot recycle, that can go to waste to energy plant, but there are plastics which can be recycled. Then we have some metals, we have glass, so those have recycling in the places. The motherboard, all those circuit boards becomes an issue, and circuit boards have rare earth elements there as well. So usually the circuit boards gets crushed into very small pieces, and then it goes through different metallurgical or process, like different extraction process. Some places also use biological process, but mostly metallurgical, like pyrometallurgical and other processes are used for extracting those heavy metals, extracting those precious metals out of that. So that's how it is done. So it's so those is component which can be recycled easily, does get recycled, and then which cannot like precious metal recovery is a slightly specialized thing. Many plants in India doesn't really go to that precious metal recovery. They just dismantle it, make it crushed, and then send it overseas, and then they have a revenue sharing arrangement where they get money back based on how much precious metal is recovered. I keep on saying that again and again. Olympics, this year Olympics, which is again as of now, I think it is still scheduled as per the plan. Whether it will be delayed or not, we don't know because of this COVID-19, but right as of today it is on plan. So there all these Olympic medals are being made from like silver, gold and copper coming from that recyclable waste, especially from electronic waste. So people are doing recycling of that. Apeksha Deshpande, how to create public awareness regarding plastic disposal? There are some irresponsible litter who litter on the road, how to bring about a larger change? That's a very, very good question actually. That's and there is no easy answer to that. It's again just education, education, education. What I have seen working, unfortunately in our country, that we all become expert of everything. That's one issue we have. Even right now you will see a lot of everybody is becoming like an expert of how to prevent yourself from this COVID-19. So we, rather than listening to the doctor's advice, you will get advice from each and every one you talk to. So but anyway, there in terms of public awareness, education, as I said, education, we have to educate people why it is essential not to litter plastic on the roads, not to throw away plastic like that, because it gets into the water, it gets into the river, it gets into ocean, it gets into fish, it gets into our food. Even we have found plastic pieces in like a Bisleri bottles, those kind of bottles. We have found plastic pieces. When I say we, the research community, you can find the data. In fact, we show you the data in your in one of the lectures videos. And also plastic in, of course, in fish and several species. Now the plastic is there, and plastic, there are some research suggesting that plastic is also coming into our salt. So the plastic pieces are making, so if we can encourage, like if we can put this all these information in a simple to understand form, like in some infographics and other stuff, and educate people, talk to people all the time. What in I think I give you that example in the video as well. In Auckland, New Zealand, while I was living there, every Sunday there will, in the newspaper, one page will be just filled with how to better manage your municipal solid waste. It's a government ad. Probably it's a subsidized, or how does it work, I don't know, but it will be giving a detail about how to recycle, what to put in which category. So those kind of awareness needs to come from school level to very senior level, and that has to happen in a regular basis, again and again and again. Then only you can create those awareness. Of course, you will have some people, then you would impose fine, like some countries do that. You find impose a litter fine, and because the money, when you impose this fine, things does get people do listen to them. Can we use plastic waste, plastic replacement for fine aggregate in concrete? I don't know that. I haven't not seen any research being reported on that, because see, plastic in fine aggregate, we have, like what we have done, one of my BTech student did couple of years back, where we have taken plastic waste and then we kind of melted it and then compressed it and made a plastic brick out of that. And that plastic brick had similar properties as like a normal brick that you get. So probably you can use it for a single storage like fence, or for security post and all that. But the problem there is the flammability. It's plastic does catch fire very easily, so you cannot you have to put a layer on top of it. So the people are also looking at the steel slag and plastic together, where plastic will act as a binder. So you melt the plastic to get the steel slag and put a brick together. So those things I have seen, but using plastic as a fine aggregate, because fine aggregate is your sand, isn't it? So sand or low, like pebbles, if you're talking about those pebbles and sands, but plastic doesn't have that property. So unless the property is similar, you cannot really replace it. So that's what my but you can make so that's I would, my guess would be no, but we have to look at the research if somebody has tried to do that with some modifications. Apeksha is asking, is it well known that microplastic cut from the bigger plastic sachets are difficult to recycle? What can possible way to handle this problem? Yes, those plastic sachets that you get, they are called multi-layered packaging. So they are not only just the plastic, it has some multi-layered stuff in there. So they are very difficult to recycle, and they are very like a small, and they doesn't give enough money to those rack pickers, so they don't really pick them up. So best way to handle those plastic sachets as of now is to actually go for put them in a waste to energy plant. So because again they do have like a certain calorific value, so it can go to a waste to energy plant. If not, if your society, if your town waste to energy plant is not economically viable for that particular town, then it can go into a secured landfill. So those are I think those are the two options which we have in terms of these for this plastic. Anurag Kumar, and that fine aggregate question was actually from Sukriti Chatterjee that we answered. Then Apeksha's question we have taken care of. Now Anurag Kumar, sir, how to prepare for NPTEL exam so that we can get 100% marks in the exam? Questions in the exam will be from lecture material only, or from extra reading material. Also, I want gold medal in the exam. So, I wish you get gold medal. Definitely, if you work hard, there is no question why you will not get it. So, again, I think you may have joined late. We did mention at the very beginning there was a very similar question in the beginning of this particular live session. So, how to prepare? So, you should look at the lecture, you should listen to the lecture videos very carefully if required again and again. You have the PDFs of the lecture slides, please go over that and look at that as well. Then for every week, if you scroll down, you will see a lot of reading materials. You should review those reading materials. Some reading materials have lots of pages there. If you look at those PDFs, we don't want you to read line by line each page, but you should get the big picture understanding. At least read the executive summary of those documents. So if you do these three stuff, you can definitely get a gold medal. So it's and I assume that you must have done quite well in all the quizzes too. So again, best of luck for that gold medal, but yes, you can go ahead and do that too. Ramjan Mulani, why in India pyrolysis in some cities at Mumbai is started using mixed non-separated plastic, which can solve our problem and even it produces energy. So, you are saying why it is not started or why it is started? You are talking about that why in India in some cities like Mumbai is started using mixed. So, if they are doing the pyrolysis of this plastic and creating energy, it's good. So, I think you are asking why it is not it is being done. If it's not, I don't as far as I remember, I don't know whether they are doing this mixed non-separated plastic right now in Mumbai, because things, as I said, things keeps on changing so fast. So, if they are doing it, very good. If they are not doing it, it can be done. Again, see, any plant, when they look at it, all depends on the economic viability. If it's not source segregated plastic, if there is no wet and dry separation, even if not only if the plastic is mixed with other recyclables, fine. It can be in a material recycling facility, they can remove other dry stuff and they can take just the plastic stuff and then go for this pyrolysis plant. But the problem is the plastic waste that is coming in, it comes with so much of dirt and other stuff in there. So, it becomes very difficult to get the clean plastic. Say if you are going to make fuel, you need a clean feed. See, any industrial process, whether with the different aspects of waste management, it does require a clean raw material. Although it may be a waste material, but still it requires a clean raw material. So, it will be like once it's a clean raw material, it requires at least source segregation to some extent. So, if they can do the source segregation, at least wet and dry, you have the drier, cleaner recyclables, you can get the plastic from there and you can set up and then you need to have enough mass. As I was telling you a few weeks ago, a few questions ago, that you need economy of a scale that has to work for that particular plant. So, you need to do that analysis, you need to look where the market will be, how will you sold that energy, who will buy that energy and what kind of different byproducts, what to do with that. So, you need to have that economic analysis of that plant and then you can go ahead and do that. Sukriti Chatterjee is back with one other question. Sir, suddenly our municipality announced plastic free city, but there is no proper waste management plant yet. So, how can it be possible to manage these existing waste? See, those unfortunately these announcements do get made that we will have plastic free or we will have zero landfill. This doesn't really most of these announcements just stays on paper. You may see some fanfares happening here and there, but at the end of the day nothing really gets done. So, as I am a bit critical of announcing something or going for something without doing proper homework. As of today, for many applications, even for single use applications, we don't have replacement of plastic. Even those cloth bags, so-called cloth bag that you use nowadays, where you go to anywhere, they will give you that cloth bag. That cloth bag itself has microplastic in there. So, actually these cloth bags is more dangerous than some of those plastic bags that we have been using earlier. Some of the so-called compostable plastic bags are using PFAS. PFAS is a group of chemicals which people are really worried about right now. So it's again, unless there is an alternative to plastic, you cannot really have plastic free cities. What is required is having a proper plastic waste management system, or having a plastic in general waste management system, which you have mentioned as well. So, that is where the emphasis should be. Just having this fanfare, having some photo ops or some one event and then people forget about all that. So, that is really what is killing our progress in terms of waste management in the country. Sunil Kumar sir, how microplastic removed from salt? Again, it's you have to in some of the salt samples that has been tested, microplastics have been found. So, how it is being removed? There is no process as such out there at an industrial level or in the lab scale as well. So, in the process itself, when they are making those before they make the salt, there only we need to kind of get this microplastic filtered out. That is what how it needs to be removed from there. Once it is part of the salt, it is a similar color. It's when you dissolve this salt, if you dissolve it salt, you will see those plastic particles kind of floating. From the naked eye, you may not be able to see it, but then you need to come up with some sort of filtration system like nanofiltration and further where you need to get those out, and then you have to again solidify that water. So, that will become a big problem. So, it is better to look at the raw material itself and try to source it, try to remove that microplastic there itself, and even better would be that not litter plastic, not litter the plastic. So, let us put the plastic in proper waste collection system. Now, for that we need a proper waste collection system. So, what we need is proper plastic waste management infrastructure, and that is what I keep on emphasizing in this course. This is the last week, you may have heard me saying again and again on that this plastic problem is not an issue, it is the plastic waste which is an issue. So, plastic waste management infrastructure needs to be developed in the country. So, I think we are going towards the end of time. So, we will have to close it now. So, again, if any I think we do not have any further questions right here. So, we will close the session. So, thank you for keeping it lively and interactive. So many questions came, and I hope you got the answers. Again, if you have any further questions, queries and other stuff, do post it on the discussion forum and we will be happy to answer for you. Those of you who have registered for the exam, all the best, all the best for your exam, and again I will probably see you someday somewhere and in some other NPTEL course online as well. Thank you, and keep safe.